Today I'm going to be taking a look at the new HDZero VRX. HDZero has come a long way since Fat Shark released it way before it was ready, causing a backlash of negativity. But you need to unlearn everything that was said back then because it's an extremely viable HD solution today. In fact, I recently went to a race at Weston Park and I was amazed at the number of pilots using HDZero. In fact, HDZero themselves built special boxes so that analog and HDZero pilots could be picked up by the commentators and displayed to the public, as well as live streamed on YouTube. And that's another benefit of HDZero because it can be used alongside analog in a race running at 25 milliwatt and interact with lap timers, whereas other HD solutions would not have a reliable enough link at 25 milliwatt or a low enough latency to compete at a high level. The HDZero VRX replaces the discontinued Fat Shark module and it has some differences. But first of all, I want to state that they are quite expensive and you already need to own a set of goggles to get going, which puts a lot of people off getting into HD FPV in general. I'd be the same if I wasn't lucky enough that Banggood sent this to me, as well as all of the other companies that send me stuff. There was a time where I could independently buy all of my own products because you can't build up a YouTube channel like this without emptying your bank account. And I still do sometimes purchase my own stuff if I can afford to do so, but due to illness and not being able to make videos as often, my only income is from my lovely patrons, so thanks to them for keeping me going. I don't like speculation in my videos. HDZero is new to me and I don't have much of a connection with them, but I've heard a whisper that a cheaper option might be in the works, similar to the Scout goggles by Fat Shark, which are also now discontinued. So fingers crossed for that to make things cheaper for people to get into HD FPV. Otherwise, if you don't have the budget, stick to analog because it's much cheaper. The VRX will bolt onto the fan of the old Fat Shark goggles or Sky Zone goggles. Alternatively, you could use Velcro or 3D printer bracket so that it fits other goggles. But to get the best experience out of HDZero, you really need high resolution screens, such as those found in the Sky Zone 04Xs or the Fat Shark HDO2s. Don't go for a set of the HDO V1s as the HDMI in only supports a 4:3 aspect ratio. So whether you have a 4:3 camera or a 16:9, it's going to be squished either way. The VRX also uses an HDMI mini cable, so make sure your goggles support that or buy the necessary adapter so that your goggles can use the included cable. I think most people recommend the Sky Zone goggles over the HDO2s because the HDMI connector is known to break really easily on the Fat Sharks, and I'm not sure they're even making the parts to replace them anymore. The only reason I'm using the Fat Sharks is because the Sky Zones just don't fit my face and they crush my nose. The new VRX is a little bit bulkier than the Fat Shark one, but not by much, and due to chip shortages, it does consume a little bit more power. It does, however, accept voltages from 2 to 6S, but you need to be careful with this because it comes with a pigtail connector so that you can power your goggles and the VRX at the same time. But most goggles can't take a 6S battery, so make sure that you're using one that suits your goggle, preferably with a large capacity due to it consuming more power. If you fly analog at the same time like I do and have your rapid fire module or any module installed into your goggles, then you want to turn off the power to the RX bay so that it keeps the power consumption down. I think the Fat Shark module had a BEC built into the XT60 connector, but they kept blowing, so they have done away with that. The package doesn't come with any antennas, so you will have to buy those at an extra cost. I've also had to purchase these 90-degree SMA connectors. However, the difference is that the Fat Shark module had built-in patch antennas at the front, whereas the HDZero give you the option to install your own antennas, which is actually a good thing because let's say you are just flying in close, you can attach 4 stubby polarized antennas to keep the weight down, or you can add your own custom patch antennas that may outperform the ones found on the old Fat Shark module. The only company making custom patch antennas for this VRX right now is AndyRC in Canada, and they clip on to some rails that have been added to this new VRX, but they make the goggles really heavy and massive. So I'm going to be using my trusty Menace Pico patch antennas and a couple of Foxeer lollipops until Menace themselves bring out their own antenna system for this VRX. If we look underneath, they have moved the SD card slot to the other side because the HDMI cable was getting in the way of that. But it does mean that the cable now covers up the newly added JST connector for future Express LRS backpack functionality. And the port next to that is for updating your VTX firmware, and they give you the cables for that in the package. The firmware on the VRX gets updated via the SD card, which is also used for recording video. Then on the top, there's a rocker switch where a long press will stop and start the video recording, and a press to the right will cycle through the different analog channels. However, when the goggles boot up, the VRX will do an auto scan anyway and get the right channel for you, although you can turn that off in the menu with a long press to the left, where you can also do things like change the aspect ratio of the camera if your camera supports it, or format the SD card, play back recorded footage, or whether you want to record the on-screen display or not, and the record format, which TS seems to be the best one for quality. You can also set it to record automatically when the model is armed. All my VTXs so far are the 200 milliwatt Whoop boards that don't have smart audio. So you can't use the Betaflight stick commands to get into the Betaflight menu to change things such as PIDs, as far as I'm aware. Someone commented on another video I did that you can, but I can't find any information on that. I tend to use the SpeedyBee device for that sort of thing anyway, so that you don't have to plug a battery into your quad. You just plug a battery into the SpeedyBee device, therefore the whole system isn't up and running and you aren't draining your quadcopter's battery. What you can do is push both of the sticks to the bottom left and right, and that will give you a menu where you can set the power output of the VTX and whether you want pit mode or 25 milliwatt when unarmed so that it doesn't cook the VTX when it's on the ground. If you push the sticks in the opposite direction, then it will instantly turn off the VTX or back on by doing the same action, which I think is a really nice feature, especially in a racing environment. Anyways, that's enough waffle. Let's go and do some flying with this VRX. Now, unfortunately, the new Emax Hawk Apex, which I'm flying here, suffers from jello, which is a shame, especially when it comes to HD stuff. And I'll be addressing that in a separate review of the model. But what I do find amazing about this system is how much confidence you can have flying through the snow, even more so than analog. I've flown analog at 200 milliwatts around this field, and there's no way I'd push things as much as I did with HDZero. Even flying through the gap in the trees. Sometimes analog would completely disappear at 200 milliwatts, whereas HDZero, you can somehow fly through it. And with the latency being fixed, there's no anxiety either, because while the snow doesn't look pretty, it's much more predictable than variable latency and bitrate. It's hard to describe without trying it for yourself, and I know DJI Walk Snail fanboys, myself included in that group, aren't going to understand that. You really need to try it for yourself. This isn't trying to do the same thing as those other systems. It can't be compared, and I'm fully on board with all of them, as well as analog. Another feature that the HDZero VRX has that the old Fat Shark module doesn't have is a built-in microphone, so it records the audio around you if you want to do a voiceover while flying. The quality isn't very good, but it is there if you want it. That breakup, it's more predictable, isn't it? You've got confidence that it's coming back, yeah. And there's no like dropped frames. It just, like, if I get to the very worst part, I can see through it. So there you go, that's my review of the new HDZero VRX. I really like it, and it's making me want to build a proper race drone, because it's been a while. Everything's been freestyle for quite some time, but there is a bubble out there of racers that are loving this stuff, and I want to get involved. Thanks to Banggood for sending it in for review. There will be links in the video description, as well as a pinned comment if you wish to get one. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.